United, ready to fly. Batman and Robin, we took to the streets, chasing the shadows where justice meets. From Calgary to Ottawa, our fight never fades, taking down the villains in our own crusades. Whose street? Our street. Nazi scum off our streets. Southern Ontario, our battleground. Protests and rallies, the truth we found. Politicians, Antifa, our foes in the night. Gotham spirit in our hearts, the fight. Facing the darkness, we stood tall. In the name of justice, answering the call. With fire in our hearts, we took them down. In the streets of Canada, we wore the crown. Federal elections, the stakes were high. David Lynn's arrest, preaching in the sky. Church Street in the GTA, the scene was...
Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, grannies, gators, friends, family, prisoners, patriots, and hostages too. It is Monday, November 3rd, and my weekend, I'll just say, did not go as planned. And by the time it came to put my show together for tonight, I really didn't know what to do or what to title it. So I thought I would just get the full disclosure out of the way right up front and apologize in advance, because this is going to be a very dark show tonight. It's kind of the consequences of what I spent the weekend researching and digging into. So I wanted to start out with that and get that out of the way. I hope you guys did have an amazing weekend regardless, but I'm left with this question. As a country, what have we become, right? And so that was where ultimately, after the research this weekend, I couldn't leave it be. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't deny it. And so, like I said, it's going to be a dark show tonight. So buckle up. But, at the end of the day, I cannot hide what I feel, what I think. What I was researching this weekend hit me hard. I cannot pretend that it didn't. And I also can't pretend to give hope and warm, fuzzy, blankets and hot cocos when I don't feel it, right? I am genuine. I am authentic. What you see is what you get, whether you, see me in the real world or here on the show or the stream. Anywhere else, what you see is what you get. Because, if you haven't figured out yet, I am absolutely the world's worst liar. I would never make a poker player. My face would rat me out instantly, so I wasn't even going to try. But I'm kind of, approaching a pretty serious crossroads, and it kind of comes back to the comment we heard from Kelsey Sheeran last week. If you're not fighting it, you're condoning it. And I'm really struggling with that the more I dig into the stuff that I was covering this weekend. And so, when it comes to what have we become, I look around the Weberverse, I guess, the Avatar universe, and when I'm sharing stuff and I look at what people do care about, but the endless things that they'll fight about. And I'm really concerned that, if we can't find a single thing to unite us on as a species even, but as Canadians specifically, if we can't unite in this one aspect of things, then I don't know if I can keep fighting for this country, right? And that's kind of what's going to be the main course event. We're going to cover some other stuff beforehand, but if we have no humanity left, if we can't find a simple common ground that murdering our own people is bad, regardless of what country you're in or what your politics are or your faith is, um, maybe our species or our country doesn't deserve the gift of life, right? I cannot fight and defend a country that condones mass murder of its own innocent and unsuspecting population, right? So it's where I kind of find myself asking, regularly, what are we becoming, and how do we set ourselves free? Can we set ourselves free from some of this? Um, we're going to see a little bit towards the end of the show. So, if you're new here, welcome to the community. We have a community, not an audience. I hope you find enough value to give us a subscription. Turn that little bell on so you get notifications. Doesn't mean you're going to get the notifications. The platforms tend to not like to send out my notifications, but it helps, and so do the thumbs up and the support. And if you're not new here, you know what to do. This is a community, not a show. And those shares that you guys give me in this program, this community, they make a way bigger difference than what you know. It's and it's the platforms reward engagement and punish sensitive subjects, right? So they make a really small set of hoops, and if you don't jump through them, then they're not going to help. So the best way that we can counter that is through community effort and putting the message out there. And it's not just mine. I encourage that for all of the trusted independent journalists and people that you trust and like. And we're going to get into that. I know that that's a shrinking percentage, I think, as more and more time goes by. But support them, whoever they might be. If you want to help keep me in the fight, there's all the information you need is down there at the bottom. Donate at whatsupcanada.org if you want to buy me a coffee or help me out. That's the best way to do it. Denny, I apologize for the Substacks. I got completely derailed in some negativity this weekend, so I did not have a chance to get caught up. So it's not nefarious issues with Substack. It's just me that I'm so far behind. I just think I'm ahead right now. So yeah, but get plugged in. That's that's a good reason why it's free too, right, guys? Yeah, I'm 5 days behind on my Substack. I think I'm actually 4 or 5. Yeah, there isn't enough time for me to to look after myself and to work. So it's like one or the other. And like I say, I apologize for that. I intended to get all caught up this weekend, and then I got waylaid by what's ultimately going to be the top story of the day. But if you do want to a free subscription to Substack, whatsupcanada.substack.com is where to go get that. So yeah, the last one was the 26th. Yeah, life just gets in the way, guys. And sometimes I get beat down to the point where I just don't have any gas left in the tank. And it's been kind of one of those weekends. Maybe it's a time change that messes me up every single time. The weather, the snow, all of those things I'm really hypersensitive to. So I'll get there. I'll get there. Yeah, it's tough doing all of this, and that's the reality of it, guys, is I do all of this myself. The research, the formatting, the shows, the Substacks, the publishing. Um, it is really a monumental amount of work. It's no exaggeration. From the time I open my eyes with my first cup of coffee, I'm working, and I'm typically working till 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe my delegation of work to myself gets skewed sometimes, but it is a one man shit show around here, to be honest. Some weeks go better than others, and that's just par for the course. And it's one of the just another one of the things that um, I guess is evidence of how authentic I really am. I don't use AI. I don't. I just I won't. So I'm still kind of old school in how I do all of those things, and sometimes I just need to take a little bit of a break. Um, Truth be told, I probably slept a good portion of the day yesterday, just so utterly drained. But it is what it is. I'm not making excuses, or whining at all. It's just that's the reality of Wayne's World, and that's kind of another. I already feel like my platforms own me a lot of days, and I would not be able to live with the guilt if I forced people to pay for my platforms and I didn't, and I just needed to take a break for whatever reason. No, Hamburger Helper, you haven't missed. Yeah, you did miss the apology. My apology was that it's not going to be a warm and fuzzy blanket and hot cocoa kind of show tonight. We're gonna be digging into some dark stuff. And sorry, Nikki, there is going to be a plenty of corruption. Hey, Mike, over on What's Up Canada. Platform was excellent panel on Source One on Saturday. Yes, it was. It was six of us gathered together there. Um, Incredibly relevant discussion. Can't say I agree with everybody all of the time on the panel, but that is the beautiful part of doing some of those panels like that. It gives a cross section of voices and gives people more, a broader context to decide, and think for themselves, right? So, hey, Cheryl over on X from the USA. Uh, I love my American friends and family down there as well. And by family, I just mean, spiritual family, soul family, whatever the case might be. Um, Love doesn't know the difference between borders when it's humanity based, and that's where my heart truly lies. And everything that I do is fighting for humanity, faith, family, freedom, and my country. Not necessarily in that order. Captured in Quebec. I think everybody in Canada is kind of feeling a little bit captured. I think that's actually why at the when I'm getting wound into my show, I say prisoners, patriots, and hostages too. That's what I'm referring to. I feel like a hostage in my own country. That's one of the challenges of doing what I do. Maybe I bring it on myself because I continuously stick my head over the parapet, and they try to take my block off on a regular basis. It's interesting. I had they gave me back my YouTube channel for 2 days, and they started pulling shows again. But that's why I built whatsupcanada.org, right? You can get plugged in on Substack over there. Everything that I do is typically, if you're here live in a stream, that's ground zero every day. And I publish the shows. We stream live on whatsupcanada.org as well. You can join the studio there. It's off the grid, shall we say, chat, not based in Silicon Valley. So a whole lot more freedom from censorship. So that's why I built it. You can get plugged into everything that I do there, Ground Zero. You can also get plugged into Bryce at New World Precious Metals. And up right above me is a QR code that is a direct link to set up an appointment with Bryce at New World Precious Metals. And you can also join the Switch with Wayne Army over there on that channel as well. So now we're going to get to the show. I did not I did not get damaged by Bread and Circus this weekend. I was absolutely working, and one of the things that may have escaped everybody, and I try to uh, at least give one little chuckle at the beginning of my show, and this is one of those that you guys. I was never a Monty Python fan, but I, do remember one line from uh, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and it was the mocking of the knights and the Holy Grail, the rabbit with the horns, the jackalope. I think that's where that term came from, and they're all riding around on their wooden horses, yelling at each other, "Run away, run away, run away!" Well, that's what was in my head when I came across this story from Western Standard, which was telling a story of how Canadian Coast Guard were told to flee if war breaks out. Run away, run away, run away. That's Canada's Navy for you. All of the all of the money that we send to foreign countries, and for all of the scams and the corruption and the abuse, we have a Navy support unit that is told to run away if anything happens, right? So to me that was yeah, if we're gonna have a dark show, some dark humor was appropriate for tonight's show. And so that's kind of the last of the actual jokes. I've got a clip from Chase Hughes coming up a little bit later, one from Tiana. I've got Glenn Beck and Whitney Webb on deck here in a little bit. But I've got a short clip that was posted by Matthew Pauly, who's a whistleblower. Some of you folks might know him from the Stop C293 committee. Very motivated, driven, and faithful man, trying to fight for his country as well. Takes a lot of hits, endures a lot of stuff, and he posted something that was it really touched me inside and went right to my heart, and helped me be okay with a lot of things. So I promise, and I think I've done a pretty good job of that, of leaving something uplifting at the end of my shows. And since I promised that, I think I don't think I've missed once yet. And this was originally kind of in my library of things to put for the tail end of a show, but I think this one was going to be necessary at the beginning of tonight's show, just by the nature of some of the darkness that we're going to be digging through tonight. And yeah, I have. Well, we'll talk about a little bit more about that a little later on. So this was a very wise video, and I thought that this would kind of fortify and strengthen our hearts, minds, and souls before we get into the real evil tonight.
Noticed that the smarter you become, the lonelier you feel. It's a peculiar thing, isn't it? You'd think that intelligence would connect you to people, that seeing more, understanding more, would bring you closer to others. But it doesn't. Instead, it separates you. You walk into a room and everyone is laughing at something you don't find funny, talking about things that seem trivial, surface level, safe, and you smile, you nod, you play along, but inside you're somewhere else entirely. You're thinking about the conversation beneath the conversation, the patterns no one mentions, the questions no one's asking, and suddenly you realize you're alone, not physically, but in every way that matters. This is the hidden cost of intelligence. The price nobody tells you about, the isolation that comes, not from being different, but from seeing differently. Let me tell you something about intelligent people, something that might explain why you feel the way you do. Intelligence isn't just about knowing more, it's about perceiving more, connecting dots that others don't see, following thoughts to their logical conclusions, even when those conclusions are uncomfortable. And here's the problem. Most people don't want to go there. They don't want to question the game. They want to play it. They don't want to examine the mask. They want to wear it. They don't want to wonder if the emperor has clothes. They want to complement the fabric. But you can't help it. You see the threads hanging loose. You notice the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the unspoken agreements everyone pretends are absolute truths. And when you point them out, even gently, even playfully, people get uncomfortable. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right. And being right about things people don't want to examine makes you dangerous. So they distance themselves. Not consciously, perhaps, not maliciously, but they do. They stop inviting you to things. They keep conversations shallow around you. They call you intense or overthinking or too serious. And you learn to keep your thoughts to yourself. You learn to dumb it down, to speak in half-truths, to laugh at jokes you don't find funny, to nod along with opinions you don't share. You learn to hide, because full honesty, you've discovered, is social suicide. Authentic expression is loneliness in motion. Being truly yourself means being truly alone. And so intelligent people find themselves in this strange position, surrounded by others, but profoundly isolated, speaking, but never really heard, present, but not quite there. It's not that you think you're better than anyone. That's not it at all. In fact, you'd give anything to just fit in, to care about the things they care about, to find meaning in the conversations they have, but you can't. You've seen too much, thought too deeply, gone too far down the rabbit hole to come back and pretend the surface is all there is. This is what people don't understand about intelligence. It's not a gift you can put down. It's not a switch you can turn off. It's a lens you see through permanently. You can't unsee patterns once you've seen them. You can't unknow things once you know them. You can't go back to simple answers once you've understood the complexity. And most people, they're still living in the simple answers, the clean narratives, the comfortable illusions. They believe what they're told to believe. They want what they're told to want. They fear what they're told to fear, not because they're stupid, but because it's easier, safer, less lonely. But you can't do that anymore. And that's why you're alone. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This loneliness you feel, this isolation, it comes in stages. And understanding these stages might help you realize you're not broken. You're just awake in a sleeping world. The first stage is confusion. You're young, perhaps, or newly aware, and you start noticing things don't add up. The adults are saying one thing but doing another. Society claims to value truth but punishes honesty. People preach kindness but practice cruelty when no one's watching. And you think, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe everyone else understands something I don't. So you try harder. You study people. You observe. You analyze. You attempt to figure out the rules of the game everyone else seems to know instinctively. So you try harder. You study people. You observe. You analyze. You attempt to figure out the rules of the game everyone else seems to know instinctively. But the more you understand, the less it makes sense. The rules are arbitrary, the game is rigged, and everyone's pretending not to notice. That's when you enter the second stage, frustration. You try to explain what you see. You point out the contradictions. You ask the questions that expose the illusions. You speak the truths everyone's thinking but no one's saying. And you're met with resistance, denial, hostility, even. People tell you you're overthinking, being negative.
Boy, that's yeah, right? That's been most of my life from a very young age, unfortunately. I was having some discussions about that on the weekends too, and I think one of the reasons why I turned out this way was I was when I was young, my parents were hounded by the school system to put me in uh, an advanced classes in for gifted people, gifted students, and my parents said no, and I held that against them for most of my life until I realized, kind of very recently that I think I dodged a bullet. I think I really did, and that that little video was quite reaffirming to me. And it's good to know, we're not broken, and being intellectual, there's a price for that, you know. So I thought that would kind of help set a bit of a more stoic tone for before we get into the other stuff. And maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm overthinking, maybe I'm being negative. I'll put that to you guys and let you guys decide for yourselves by the end of the show. But I don't think so. I don't think I'm overreacting. I think I'm reacting exactly appropriately, and we're going to take a little bit of a path through that. But little clip from Conrad Black. And I think that this is one of the things that I think is becoming more and more and more clear in the entire Avatar and media war battle space Avatar universe, right? So Conrad Black calls
One of the
Canadian media fake.
threats to our civil rights in this country is the utterly unacceptably incompetent performance of 90% of our media. Ultimately, we're not going to have an informed electorate unless we have a higher standard of media integrity. One of the threats to
I guess it was shorter than I thought, and looped around. The gremlins are playing with my stuff already. But he's right. And it's more than just a threat to our human rights. It is a threat to our very existence. And that was one of the things that came up on the panel show that I was invited to, and on Saturday. And had I known who was there, I may have declined. But all in all, at the end of the day, it was a good thing, because until you see, and I'm not calling anybody on the show on Saturday a turkey, but when you get into a crowd of other birds, you can sometimes tell, where you can tell which is sometimes the prettier bird. And I'm feeling pretty these days. Since Saturday nights, anyways. Okay. So since we're going to be getting into a lot of evil and darkness tonight, I wanted to start with something, that kind of leads back to it all, or connects to all of it. Rule 101. It doesn't matter if it's Sherlock Holmes or Nancy Drew, or the detective squad, in your town. It's always the first question, Rule 101, and it's the same when you're looking for the truth behind stories, is si bono, right? Si bono. Who benefits? Follow the money. And we know that all wars are bankers' wars, and they're trying to start another World War III, World War IV, World War V, whatever you want to call it. This is a nasty one that they're getting us in, but it's always about money. Who benefits? Si bono. But if the whole world is in debt, who are they all in debt to? Anybody wonder that from time to time? If we're all broke and we're all in debt and we're all suffering, who does the whole world owe the money to? Well, that's what we're going to take a little bit of a look at here now from what is this? Financial History, I think, is the name of this channel. Yeah, Financial Historian.
Every country on earth is in debt. The United States now owes over $38 trillion, the highest figure in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion. Japan, almost $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia or export powerhouses like Germany and China all owe enormous sums. But here's the paradox. If everybody owes money, who exactly is owed? This is the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Debt isn't just a burden, it's the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every boom and bust sits on top of this invisible scaffolding of IOUs. And if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you discover something unsettling. The world doesn't owe money to anyone in particular. It owes it to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. To understand how we reached this point, a planet drowning in over $315 trillion of total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy, we need to go back to the beginning. Centuries before the first credit card swipe or digital transfer, the idea of national debt was born not in Wall Street, but in war. In 1694, England was fighting France and running out of gold. The king turned to merchants for help. In exchange for a permanent stream of interest payments, backed by future taxes, they financed the crown. To manage this new arrangement, the Bank of England was created. It was revolutionary. The state could now spend money it didn't yet have. And in return, lenders received something priceless, a promise from the government, one that could be traded, bought, or sold. That was the birth of the government bond, the seed of the modern financial system. France copied it. The Netherlands refined it. The newly independent United States adopted it to fund its revolution and later its expansion westward. National debt became not a mark of failure, but a measure of credibility. The ability to borrow was the ability to rule. Empires once conquered territory to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield became the balance sheet. Fast forward 3 centuries, and debt has become the world's dominant export. The United States owes $38 trillion, Japan over $9 trillion, and global borrowing increases by the equivalent of $1 trillion every 100 days. Every country owes. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both debtor and creditor. But who, exactly, holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States, because its debt isn't just national, it's global. Out of that $38 trillion, about half is publicly held, meaning owed to investors rather than to other parts of government. Roughly 2/3 of those investors are American. Banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining 1/3, about $9 trillion, sits in foreign hands. Japan is the top holder with around $1 trillion, followed by China with about $800 billion, then the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the US is in debt to China, that's true, but only for roughly 2% of the total. Most of the debt America owes is to America. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys them back, creating new dollars in the process. Americans pay taxes that fund interest on those bonds, which then flow into American retirement accounts. It's a circular mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is mostly a reflection of the same system. And this circularity isn't just American, it's global. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank. Developing nations, in turn, lend back to advanced economies by parking foreign exchange reserves in Western bonds. It's a planetary game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is secured by another promise. It's like a poker table where every player has borrowed chips from the next. And the only rule keeping the game alive is that nobody stands up. But there's a fourth layer, the most powerful of all, the markets themselves. Behind every government bond sits a web of institutions. Hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks, managing tens of trillions in assets. They are the true arbiters of credit. They decide which nations can borrow cheaply and which will pay a premium for survival. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse, governments fall, and entire economies can be restructured overnight. Democracy decides who governs, markets decide who survives. And the ultimate market maker, the modern high priest of this system, is the central bank. Central banks don't merely manage debt, they manufacture it. Every time the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, it creates new money in exchange. The liability of one balance sheet becomes the asset of another. Every dollar in circulation represents a unit of debt somewhere else. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every coin, every bill, every digital dollar has an IOU engraved invisibly on its surface. For decades, this loop has sustained itself through confidence. So long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if never the principal, the machine keeps turning. But what happens when confidence wavers? We've seen it before. In Greece in 2010, the government's debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked, yields spiked. The European Central Bank and IMF intervened, but their rescue came with austerity, tax hikes, spending cuts, and mass unemployment. For an entire generation, bailout became another word for sacrifice. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into a national curse. In Sri Lanka, fuel shortages and political collapse followed when the government ran out of foreign currency to service loans. When the system breaks, the creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, the rating agencies, the anonymous bondholders who hold entire nations by the throat. And yet, even after collapse, the same logic restarts. New loans replace old ones, old debts are restructured. The machine resets with a new name on the same balance sheet. That's because in the 21st century, debt isn't designed to be repaid. It's designed to be rolled over. Governments today don't actually plan to pay off their debt. Not now, not ever. That's not conspiracy. It's policy. When you or I take a loan, we're expected to repay the principal. But governments operate differently. They treat debt like a rolling subscription, issuing new bonds to pay off old ones, a process economists call refinancing. Interest becomes the real product, the rent charged for stability. The global economy now depends on that rent, like a shark that must keep swimming to breathe. The global financial system today runs on confidence, not repayment. The United States will never clear its $38 trillion debt. It will refinance it forever. Japan has been rolling over its debt for decades, now exceeding 250% of GDP, and yet its government bond yields remain near zero. Investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They're waiting to renew the deal. Why? Because for them, government debt is the safest collateral in existence. A U.S. Treasury bond isn't viewed as a liability. It's an asset, the foundation of global markets. Pension funds hold it. Banks use it as security. Central banks treat it as money. The system depends on governments never paying off their debt. Because if they did, the world would lose its most trusted financial instrument. Imagine if Washington somehow decided to pay down every last dollar of its debt. Banks and funds around the world would suddenly lose their most stable asset. The dollar supply would shrink dramatically, triggering deflation and collapse. Paying off the debt would destroy the very thing that makes the economy function. So governments do the opposite. They keep issuing more, not recklessly, but rhythmically. The debt becomes a kind of heartbeat for capitalism itself, pulsing through every pension, mortgage, and market on Earth. And that's why when politicians talk about balancing the budget or paying down the national debt, they're selling an illusion. The goal isn't to eliminate debt. It's to keep it sustainable, serviceable, and desirable enough that the system never stops believing in it. Because once belief fades, the numbers stop mattering. Confidence collapses, interest rates spike, and the economy, built entirely on rolling promises, grinds to a halt. That's the real secret of sovereign debt. The plan was never to pay it back. The plan is to keep the world believing it will. It's a closed loop of trust, and as long as that trust holds, the numbers can stretch indefinitely. But trust is not evenly distributed. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half true. Interest payments don't flow equally through society. They flow upward, from taxpayers and workers to the institutions and investors that hold the debt. In other words, debt isn't just a transfer between countries. It's a transfer between classes. That's why global inequality and global indebtedness rise together. The system rewards those who own debt and punishes those who merely pay it. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the same story scaled up. From households to nations, from nations to the planet. Creditors aren't villains, debtors aren't victims. They're two sides of the same engine. The problem is, what happens when the engine runs out of fuel? When new borrowing can't keep pace with the promises made before? That's when the question, who's the creditor, stops being abstract and starts being personal. Because at the top of this global pyramid, there isn't one face to blame. It isn't China. It isn't Wall Street. It isn't the IMF. It's all of them, and us. The modern financial system has turned debt itself into money. Governments issue it, banks multiply it, investors trade it, and citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor has blurred beyond recognition. Debt once meant bondage. Today, it means balance. But if that balance ever tips, if confidence breaks, the illusion ends, and we'll remember what debt really is. A promise that can't be kept forever. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe.
All right. I think that was a pretty nice little clip regarding some of that, and we're gonna get into some of the darker sides of maintaining that debt by governments and their empty promises. Right? Remember that a little later on when we get to the more diabolical side of the story. But There's a path to that, and when it gets to a point where governments and their empty promises, they need to steer people in directions that maintain the continuity of the flow of the money, right? And there's a lot of dark entities that take part in that. And I've got a post up from a little video from Andy Lee where she goes over 300 progressive entities and charities, nonprofits, NGOs, unions, where they all teamed up to interfere in our last federal election. Which, does anybody believe still that Canada has free, fair, and accurate elections? Anybody? Right? I mean, if you do, then I encourage you to go back and watch that interview with the former CSIS agent who told us that, literally every single prime minister since like 1985 has been corrupted by foreign interference, which means that we haven't had a legitimate prime minister representing the people for 40 years, right? And so here we are with this last election and another one coming that really disturbs me because of the way, we've seen this happen before and the pattern is running itself again. This time, Mark Carney, mark my words, is going to come out with a majority. And at that point, my safety is no longer possible even in this country for being an independent thinker and broadcaster. Talking to people around the world over the last couple of days and looking at what's coming down the pipe here, I cannot guarantee my own safety in my own country more than 90 days from now. Can't do it. Doesn't exist there. And these are some of the groups and entities that are making it happen, providing the plausibility, these guys all operate with plausible deniability. Oh, they're nonprofits, they're non-governmental organizations. They don't have any influence on the election. No. Well, this is just some of the companies and entities that are, you're going to have to get a hold of this video and write them down because there's no way it would take me hours to read through these organizations that support the Vote Palestine platform, right? Elected members of parliament. The election may be over, but our work is not. The following elected MPs supported the Vote Palestine platform during the campaign period. Let's make sure our voices are heard. Call, email, and continue to apply pressure to the MPs below to hold them to account, which means that Palestine is operating a terrorist or action, a jihad against members of parliament in our government and getting a bunch of support. So let me know if you recognize any of your MPs in here in this next clip. Sima Akan, Farizos, Shafqat Ali, Chris Biddle, Alexandre Boulouris, Sean Casey, Sean Chen, Don Davies, Nathaniel Erskine Smith, Leah Gazan, Gord Johns, Ikra Khalid, Ernie Clausen, Jenny Kwan, Tim Lewis, Elizabeth May, Heather McPherson, Alexandra Mendez, Jacques Ramsey, Aslam Rana, Gerbux Saini, Jenna Suds, Christina Tesser Dirksen, Adam Van der Koven, Van Coverden, I guess. Patrick Wheelers, Selma Khalid, and I wonder if that's any relation to Ikra Khalid, and Samir Zubaira. That's foreign influence, guys. They support demands for two-way arms embargoes on Israel, ending Canadian support for settlements, combating anti-Palestinian racism, and protect pro-Palestinian speech, recognizing the state of Palestine, funding Gaza relief efforts, including UNRWA. those are your political representatives for a significant portion of the country. That is foreign interference on steroids, supporting terrorist regimes and organizations. And now we're going to get into some of the other stuff. It's not gonna be fun stuff tonight. But just before we get into that, one of the conversations that came up in a space I was in today was the social contract. Does everybody know what the social contract is? I know I've used it on this platform. I've mentioned it a lot of times, and in this context for tonight's show, I have noticed that Pierre Poilievre has changed some of his wording, and he's all about using the word promise, 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 the promise of Canada, the promise to our youth, the promise of this, the promise of that. Well, that promise that he's alluding to is a part of the social contract. But here, by the time we get to the end of the show, we'll be talking about where they're lying and pretending about the promise of our country, right? So the social contract is a theory nearly as old as philosophy itself, is the view that persons' moral and or political obligations are dependent on a contract or agreement among them to form the society in which they live. We agree to disagree and still be friends. That's a social contract, right? We agree upon a set of rules by which to live by. Socrates uses something quite like a social contract argument to explain the Crito, why he must remain in prison and accept the death penalty. However, social contract theory is rightly associated with modern moral and political theory and is given its first full exposition and defense by Thomas Hobbes. After Hobbes, John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau are the best known proponents of this enormously influential theory, which has been one of the most dominant theories within moral and political theory throughout the history of the modern West. In the 20th century, moral and political theory regained philosophical momentum as a result of John Rawls' Kantian version of social contract theory, which was followed by new analysis of the subject by David Gautier and others. More recently, philosophers from different perspectives have offered new criticisms of social contract theory. In particular, feminists and race-conscious philosophers have argued that social contract theory is at least an incomplete picture of our moral and political lives, and may in fact camouflage some of the ways in which the contract is itself parasitical upon the subjugations of classes and persons, which means the pedos of the world are telling us that if you don't support maps and carving up kids and gender identity and soji and all of that shit, then you are committing an offense against a social contract, whereas most of the rest of us would believe that and agree that you don't carve up kids. Abusing children is something that our society doesn't agree with, although recently our courts have, which tells you that our courts have been captured by those who seek to rewrite the social contract, and our courts and judges have broken and shattered exactly the social contract that we live our daily lives by. And that social contract is what I was talking about in my little monologue to start the show. I am not okay with a country that thinks mass murder of its own people is okay. I'm not okay with that. That is not the social contract that I signed up for. It is not okay for our government to take the vulnerable, the senior, the mentally ill, the people that our society is supposed to protect, and turn them into recycled body parts that they can sell off to the highest bidder, because Canada has become, the world's #1 human butcher and retail shop. That is shattering the social contract. So when Pierre says the promise at a better life, he's skipping way above. Where is the promise of life in our country? The unborn aren't even promised life in our country. So we're supposed to trade off the promise of life for a better financial solution to our life. That is rewriting the social contract. Forcing the rest of the population, our entire population, to accept abortion to any term is rewriting the social contract. This is a social re-engineering that's been going on in Canada, usurping our country, and now we're seeing it in the courts with Mr. Miller saying that some passages from the Bible are now offensive and need to be struck down and censored, or you go to jail because they're offensive to people that we shouldn't be frickin' answering to. That is rewriting the social contract. In Canada, our country is built on recognizing the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Now, these people that think that they have control of the rule of law gives them the right to rewrite the entire social contract and place them in a superior position to God even. Pierre Poilievre would never come on my show. Not in a million years. They know exactly who I am and what I think. The entire political apparatus knows who I am. Do you know how I know that? Because if I go to a political event, they stop me at the door, and I'm assigned a security person that stands in front of my face the entire time I'm there. Makes it kind of challenging to be there, right? So now, keeping that social contract in mind, and where they're actually failing and hiding their failures and rewriting it, things are happening fast. I'm going to clip here from Whitney Webb and Glenn Beck talking about some of the things that could be happening, and it could be happening really, really fast. So to keep our eyes peeled on some of this. So without any further ado, Glenn Beck and Whitney Webb for a short clip.
Monopoly and build monopolies. They have, unfortunately. But I think, again, this is what I was saying earlier about the World Economic Forum. There's an effort to sell this since they couldn't sell it from the left. The goal now is to try and sell it somehow from the right. And to try and frame it under metrics and dialectics that'll be more appealing to the group that was most against these policies just a few years ago. And unfortunately, with AI and all of that, it could happen if people aren't vigilant. Just a few years ago.
In this recent interview with Chris Hedges, Whitney Webb uncovers how U.S. authorities have, for decades, maintained secret databases and surveillance programs that target ordinary Americans under the radar. She shows how contemporary pre-crime technologies and legal frameworks are built on this legacy, expanding the state's ability to monitor, profile, and even detain citizens without public scrutiny.
Vendors, even when this inaccuracy is demonstrated. So to me, that says that their goal is to have us induce and be obedience by the fact that you're being watched all the time, and anything you may do could be used against you, even if you're not doing anything wrong now. an algorithm could determine that certain, errant behaviors warrant you being added to a list of some type. And actually, Larry Ellison of Oracle, who is one of the main funders of Tony Blair's institute, that's one of the biggest pushers for digital ID in the UK, said this at an Oracle shareholder meeting that, we're recording and surveilling everything and citizens will be on their best behavior
terrifying.
because they have to, essentially, paraphrasing.
The fact that Donald Trump is listening to that guy is terrifying to me. I mean, he has put some people around him on this tech board that are not friends of freedom and liberty. They're just not. Larry Ellison is leading that pack.
Yeah, a lot of them are I would argue overtly and also covertly globalist. You have people, in that network you just mentioned, serving, for example, on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group, which is, a well-known closed-door meeting, globalist conflab. And unfortunately, I think some of them anyway, have been able to characterize their policies as libertarian, for example, even though some of those same oligarchs are on record saying that the free market is for losers. If you want to get rich, build a monopoly. And build monopolies, they have, unfortunately. But I think, again, this is what I was saying earlier about the World Economic Forum. There's an effort to sell this since they couldn't sell it from the left. The goal now is to try and sell it somehow from the right. And to try and frame it under metrics and dialectics that'll be more appealing to the group that was most against these policies just a few years ago. And unfortunately, with AI and all of that, it could happen if people aren't vigilant. Just a few years ago, someone like Elon Musk was a major promoter of things like carbon markets and pricing carbon, for example. And that was actually why he had a falling out with Trump in Trump's first administration, was because Trump pulled out of the Paris agreements, and Elon Musk was like, well, I can't have that.
Oh, I want to interrupt here on a couple of points. This whole security surveillance state thing was going on before Trump came into office. I did a deep dive report on that for Wendy Bell. This has been going on since Iraq and Afghanistan. All of those operatives that were over there were brought back and given nice cushy jobs at the tech bro companies, and have been developing this stuff for a decade or more than a decade already, since all of that's since the beginning of that conflict. So you can go back to Bush and Obama for the beginning of all of that. So this has been a long time in the making. And when it comes to Elon Musk and carbon credits, you put up a post today again defending carbon credits and carbon taxes. So a lot of these tech bros, they look at leadership, the presidents, as temporary. That's how they look at them. And they will go along to get along. We're seeing Bill Gates do that here now as well. Oh yeah, climate change, not so bad. It's not the end of the world. You can bet your bottom dollar the very instant Trump were out of office, his term were up, whatever the case might be, Gates would be right back in there trying to do the same thing with the rest of the globalist swamp creatures as well. So I wanted to share at least both sides. The Patriot Act is not a good thing. It is not a good thing in America. I didn't know a lot about it till I met James Roguski. Had a good chat with him yesterday as well. There's going to be a massive story that I'm going to get to help break with James that's going to rattle the planet. But he's got 11,000 pages of documents to go through, so we're going to have to wait a little bit for that, but I just want to plant that seed. Stay tuned, guys. It's going to be a few weeks, but there's going to be some earth-shaking disclosures that you guys will get to hear about. So if you're not following James, you should be. And right, so yeah, back to Elon Musk. He's still my candidate my no, I won't say that because I'm streaming on X, and I hate being as shadow banned as I ordinarily am. But yeah, Elon's playing both sides of the fence, as I think are 99.9% of the tech bros. And do you think, well, you've seen what happens. Elon challenged President Trump. That didn't go so well for him, did it? Right? So interesting times indeed.
That. So have these oligarchs really changed, or have they instead tried to make themselves more appealing because they've noticed the change in public opinion and want to try and get us to continue to buy into their solutions that they have a lot of money to spend convincing us are actually good and rebranding them.
So
And
how,
again, this is why I say it's important to focus on the policies specifically.
how do we,
Yeah, in addition to saying that everything will be tokenized, he's said that everything will soon be on the same universal digital ledger or database, and that everything on that database will have a unique identifier number. So for you as an individual, your identifier number will presumably be your digital ID or directly linked to that. But everything will have a digital ID. The tokenization agenda in particular seeks to tokenize not just assets that we traditionally think of, like real estate, for example, or gold, or physical assets as well as digital assets like Bitcoin. There's a major effort connected with people like Fink, and also people like Mark Carney, who's now Prime Minister of Canada, to tokenize the natural world and transform it into financial assets. And there was an attempt to do this to an extent under the Biden administration, I believe through the Department of Interior, with natural asset corporations, but that has not gone away. And there are groups, for example, one of the creators of the ETF model originally, which BlackRock now owns, iShares. His name is Peter Kniez, I think is how you pronounce it. He's trying to turn the Amazon rainforest into a digital commodity, sort of similar to Bitcoin in terms of like the scarcity idea that each hectare of the Amazon rainforest would represent a token, and then
Exactly what Bill C-293 was here, which they've just broken a bunch of these bills down into smaller bits and bite-sized pieces and slid them into other bills here in Canada. But that's exactly what we covered on about Bill C-293. So again, this assault, this unrestricted warfare on all of our nations and countries is completely in harmony with evil, the World Economic Forum, UN, IMF, Fourth Reich, whatever you want to call it, the swamp, the deep state, the shadow governments that are trying to rule the world. Yeah, every blade of grass will be accounted for. In England, they're already giving you your carbon credit score on every bit of food and product that you buy. It's got a little point stamp on it. It tells you how many carbon credits you're using today. Wait till they put a limit on it.
Utilize it that way, and then each hectare would then have its unique identifier, right, on the blockchain, and would be serviced by surveillance drones and all sorts of stuff. So even our most like natural, the places we conceptualize as the most natural places on Earth, these people want to come in, place surveillance technology and tokenize it and put it on a blockchain and use it to, I would argue in the case particularly of natural asset corporations.
Webb further reveals that Israeli intelligence agencies have deliberately built startups to act as covert arms of their operations, gaining contracts with key U.S. infrastructure and emergency systems. She explains how these firms, with the help of influential donors and government connections, have become deeply embedded in the machinery of U.S. surveillance and control. The result is a system where foreign and domestic interests are intertwined, and the true reach of institutional power is kept hidden from the public.
what are the ones we should be avoiding right now?
Well, I think people should do their own research and look at who owns what. But a lot of these billionaires, you have, people like Larry Ellison and Eric Schmidt, the Google guys, people like Peter Omidyar, who were on the left, Reid Hoffman, Bill Gates, right? And then you have, people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the PayPal mafia crowd. Most of them frame themselves as libertarian. If you look at their philosophy, their own words, they're overtly transhumanist. A lot of them, despite saying things to the contrary, want global government in some form. And, the ones on the supposedly libertarian side frame it as having a CEO in charge of everything, but a CEO that would govern as a dictator. So I don't ultimately see that as much better, given all this technology that's would be in the hands of this one, or this very small group of people. But they don't own everything. They own a lot of technology, obviously, and technological platforms, social media, and all sorts of things. But it's up to people if they want to continue using those services and supporting these people, because ultimately they need us to make their system work. They want to harvest us for data, and like I said earlier, they want to use us as bootloaders for their digital intelligence, and they can't continue to improve and feed the AI without us doing it for them. They can't do it alone. So,
but people they're not likely to leave things that make their life easier. They're just not.
Yeah, well, that's the price of convenience.
That's the price of convenience. That is Satan's candy. Continuously giving blood transfusions of data to the beast that controls us. Is there any better analogy than that? They're not just harvesting our blood to sell and use and abuse. They're not harvesting our bodies and our organs, but they are now harvesting every droplet of our blood of data. That is the data is the blood of the beast system. This is where we have to sever it. I know that's not an easy task. We become very addicted to that satanic lullaby of convenience. To me, AI, digital ID is where I draw the line. I still have to use the technology in order to do good with it. But no, I'm trying to offload apps, use less apps, stop giving them the blood that they need, which is all of our actions every single day. If there's, okay, what do we got here? 400 on between X and Facebook and whatsupcanada.org, another couple hundred over between Instagram and Rumble. Wimkin doesn't use your data, but we're over there too. Between those 600 people that are tuned into this show right now, how many keystrokes a day and videos, memes, graphics, conversations, texts, how many a day would that amount to between just us 600 people? Wimkin, Wimkin. It's like Facebook, but one of us and better. So yeah, I stream on Wimkin as well. That's Jason, our friend from the States. He built that. The Supreme Court in the U.S. tried to take him down several times in the U.S., Jason Shepard. And he fought the O'Bidens and won. And has been directly competing against Facebook through and X through all of the abuse with the rest of us. So one of the in the trenches guys, brilliant guy that built all of this because he didn't agree to go with the flow. He didn't agree to go along to get along. So he basically got booted out of the Brainiac Silicon Valley crowd and decided to build Wimkin. Wimkin is an app. Yep, that's spelled correctly. I'll put it on the screen. Yeah, I was checking if the .com or what exactly it was. Yep. Wimkin.com. Check it out. The thing about it is, and what keeps him safe from the courts is he doesn't save your login credentials. He doesn't save any of the data. So if you lose your password for Wimkin, you're pooched. That's how he supports free speech and truth, right? So they every time anybody wants to come calling for somebody's footprint on his platform, he says, "No, I don't save any, so you can't have it," which is pretty cool. I stream there as well. I don't have a chat group really over there. Occasionally, some folks tune in over there, but it's more American voices down there. It's an American platform. Doesn't have the bazillions of dollars that the other guys do. So, but wow, that talk about getting into the weeds, right? Yeah, WIMKIN. There you go. Z, you've had Wimkin for 3 or 4 years. I've known Jason 3 or 4 years, right? He launched that during the time of COVID, and we did a lot of stuff together the best we could to fight back on that. So yeah, I'll get back to the show here because I could talk about this other stuff. I do have an Odyssey account, but I typically I mostly use it for a backup library, like a security vault of stuff, because it, for some reason or other, it might be just my dashboard interruptions, disruptors, whatever the case might be. I haven't found it reliable to stream to over on Odyssey. If I had more hours, time, and hands, I would take the time to upload my shows to other platforms. But as I had to fess up to earlier, I can't even keep up to uploading them all on my Substack. So, yeah, it's just too much. But yeah, Odyssey seems to be pretty good. But anyways, back to the conversation.
Isn't it? And I think a lot of the effort to enslave us has been to cajole us and influence us with convenience and comfort. But also in theory, you know, prison is comfortable, right? In the sense that you have a roof over your head and they bring you food. And I mean, you know, a digital prison without walls, you know, could be similarly comfortable, and you wouldn't have to lift a finger to fight, you know, for your freedom, but we can still, you wouldn't have to lift a finger to fight for your freedom. You would just willingly walk into the system, right? But those of us that don't want to live in the system have to do something. And so I think we're at a crossroads, and have been for several years, where those of us that don't want to walk into this have to actively build alternatives. And if you don't have, you know, a ton of people in your community doing that, maybe you should reach out and build awareness. But if you have people that are aware of this around you, it's important to build, I would argue, local resilient networks that don't depend on this infrastructure. There's still open source alternatives to a lot of the you know, big tech platforms out there. And I still think that I'm still hopeful that there is time. But, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you know, if they're pushing us towards a post-human future, I think at some point people will realize that they don't want to lose what makes us human. And so much of what we're being pushed to use AI for are creative pursuits that help define us as human, right? Making art, making music, writing. These are the things that we're being told to outsource to artificial intelligence, not necessarily the tedious stuff, right? So what's going to be left for us when we outsource this all to AI? Will we allow ourselves to be cognitively diminished to the point that we can't even create anymore? And then what kind of, you know, humans are we at that point? So I think it's very important.
Webb cautions that these covert programs and partnerships enable a permanent state of surveillance and potential repression, all under the pretense of security and innovation. She urges the public to stay aware of these hidden networks, to question mainstream narratives, and to seek out independent alternatives. Webb's findings make it clear. These are the secrets those in power hope you never discover.
Remember, if it's free, you are the product when it comes to the development and tech and some other stuff. And one of the, just as a quick little bit of further context for what we were just talking about, or the warning of all of this, Palantir's data analytics and AI software are integrated with Starlink's satellite network to enable advanced technology on the modern battlefield. Starlink provides the communications infrastructure, and Palantir's software process intelligence data from various sources, including satellites for military and government users. So it's like, here's the thing. We might own our own data. You might own your own data. But none of us own the roads in between how we get data and information, right? So that's where they've got us basically trapped. We have sovereignty over our own information and yada, yada, yada. But it's the roads and the infrastructure, the railroads, the airlines, all of it, the emails, all of it is owned by somebody else, the interfaces. And those are always free, right? So from David Sachs, I got a little clip here, who suggests that a lot of us think of AI like the Terminator, and he's right. And it kind of adjusted, fine-tuned my thinking of it. When we think Terminator, artificial intelligence, androids and robots hunting humans, but that's not the control of AI. That's the law enforcement and protection units for AI. The robots are run by a far greater Orwellian nucleus than robotics, right? Am I making sense? It's not the robots we have to be afraid of. It's the 1984 Big Brother that controls the robots. And this is Jeffrey Sachs.
I almost feel like the term woke AI is insufficient to explain what's going on because it somehow trivializes it. I mean, what we're really talking about is Orwellian AI. You know, we're talking about AI that that lies to you, that distorts an answer, that rewrites history in real time to serve a current political agenda of the people who are in power. I mean, it's very Orwellian, and we were definitely on that path before President Trump's election. It was part of the Biden EO. We saw it happen, you know, in the release of that first Gemini model. That was not an accident. That, you know, that those distorted outputs came from somewhere. To me, this is the biggest risk of AI. Actually, it was not described by James Cameron. It was described by George Orwell. You know, it's in my view, it's not the Terminator. It's 1984 that you know, that as AI eats the internet and becomes the main way that we interact and get our information online, that it'll be used by the people in power to control the information we receive, that it'll contain an ideological bias, that essentially it'll censor us. All that trust and safety apparatus that was created for social media will be ported over to this new world of AI. And then on top of that, you've got the surveillance issues where, you know, AI is going to know everything about you. It's going to be your kind of personal assistant. And so it's kind of the perfect tool for the government to monitor and control you. And to me, that is by far the biggest risk of AI. And that's the thing we should be working towards preventing. And the problem is a lot of these regulations that are being whipped up by these fear-mongering techniques, they're actually empowering the government to engage in this type of control that I think we should all be very afraid of, actually.
Did that give you guys chills down your spine? Did me. That was one of the motivating factors when I saw them building that 20 2019, before I even launched this platform. If you've been around forever, you'll know that marketing and development was my jam until I saw that, because I was working with neuro-linguistic programming experts and elite level therapists, and like that's who I was working with. And so when I saw it coming, and I had my awakening in 2018, 2019, I fired all of my clients and refused to take part in their systems. Right. So that's to me, this is just, it's not something that surprises me. I completely understand it. It's about gauging the timeline, which is honestly more difficult outside of this system than it was within the system. But I'm good with that. It's dodged another bullet there getting out of that system when I did. But so the timeline is picking up on that. The concern, these are things we absolutely need to be concerned with now, particularly here in Canada, in our situation. And we'll put that lens back on here now, looking at the expansion of the control and power state here in Canada. This is going to be disturbing, but yet confirming the continuity of the crime syndicate posing as government.
So just to recap there, you were instructed to look at someone's mail, seize it, and you were never given a warrant behind the scenes for that action.
No, I received the order to go to that. I'm being very careful of what, not to identify location, but it was a government location. I was told that there was seized mail there. Mail was being retained there, and I should go and look at it to see if there's anything of interest. I have some specialized training in analysis and a good solid background in investigation. So I went there and I looked at the mail that was there. The mail was belonging to 3 individuals living in Canada that were already under a certain process with CBSA. I followed my orders, assuming that this was part of a regular process. But after I did my work, the official that was there was a person, an official government employee also, in an investigation capacity. And I asked for the warrant number, and that person became very uncomfortable. I was also uncomfortable not having the proper paperwork in my hands. I was just directed by a high-ranking member to go there. But yet, I was never provided the warrant number before or after I submitted my report. And what happened to what I seized was never, there was never any feedback by management. And they had a duty and obligation to do so, because if I had been calling court, this would have been a problem.
So when you say that your superiors within the CBSA were very uncomfortable when you asked them about the warrants, in what sense? Did they get on their back foot and kind of feel like, oh, you know, stuttering and this and that, kind of coming up with a thing? Or did they get aggressive towards you? Like, what was that interaction like?
No, actually, it wasn't the CBSA management that was uncomfortable. It was the person at the other government location that was holding the mail.
Okay.
And what happened is when I came back, the management wasn't there. I put whatever I seized with my report on the manager's desk inside his office, and there was never any follow-up by him. And the day went on. I did my job. Day went on, and I was never provided any feedback by him or anything. And I was never asked to go there again. Somebody else was dispatched there later on for further other businesses. So I think that the silence was intentional So by CBSA management.
So, do you think that this is a larger trend within these institutions, or do you think that this was a anomaly that you were a part of? Do you, and just kind of happened to be wrong place, wrong time, or wrong person? Or do you think that there is just a pattern of these style of things happening within the institutions?
Well, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen over the years, I think it's something that's common. Whether there was a warrant number or not, there would still have been a failure in the process of doing that thing. Second of all, based on everything I've seen and some of the orders I received and some of the things I reported to the MPs, to the RCMP, I think that there's a pattern there, and there's definitely need to an oversight. And when I see these bills, I think that I'm confident that they're just trying to legitimize things that were already being done under the shadow, And this is not. This is one of the many things that when I testified in Parliament, it was agreed that I wouldn't talk about everything to avoid public scrutiny. There was not. It was an opportunity in Parliament to try to restore integrity and the way we do things, and give an opportunity for proper investigation that never came.
Boom, guys. Boom. Steve's, you got it too. This guy is 100% corroborating exactly what Michelle Juno Katsuya and Gary Clemente, when I asked them, and this question is going to live in my brain forever because it shattered my expectations beyond measure. When we were listening to them, Peter McIsaac and I were interviewing these two gentlemen, former CSIS agent and RCMP senior investigator, and they were explaining the corruption, how it was laid out and structured going back to Trudeau Sr., who was the one that dismantled and neutered the law and intelligence apparatus in Canada. And I was listening to all of that, and at about the 37-minute mark of that interview, no, I think I lost you. I didn't mean to take that down quite yet. It's posted as Canada's dirtiest secret. This is what people have to understand. The entire system at this point in Canada exists only to provide plausibility and plausible deniability to maintain the continuity of the crime syndicates posing as government. And when I asked them that, they were both nodding their heads and absolutely agreeing and telling me that was very accurately stated. Which means for 40 years, this crime syndicate has been operating exactly as this gentleman described. And the interference and corruption is off the hook at this point to protect the continuity of the crime syndicate. Yes, Dene boy, the UV, yes, they brought them out they use them in Canada here. They have them, and they use them on the streets at some of the gatherings, right? Not all the time, but they have. All right, so excuse me if I get such a lift out of hearing other people's testimony corroborating exactly the same crimes against our country and the manipulation and abuse that we've been uncovering for such a long period of time. Vindication is kind of sweet. I cannot deny it. So up next, I've got Sam Cooper speaking. Asked the question. He's asked the question: has Canada been captured? Speaking, of course, he's an expert on Chinese foreign influence. We saw earlier all of the NGO nonprofits and lobbyists, right? And I keep coming back to this to protect the continuity of the crime syndicate posing as government, because it's rotating crime syndicates, right? That is party politics in Canada. They're all crime syndicates working together, competing for their turn at the trough to maintain the continuity of the crime syndicate. That is government in Canada. Bottom line. And that's a Wayne original. So I will keep repeating that every opportunity I get, every time it gets corroborated, and I'll probably say it again before we're done listening to Sam Cooper here as well. So write that one down, folks. That one is that one is serious artillery in your quiver of accurate ways to describe a situation.
Elite capture is a term that stems from experts such as David Mulrooney, Canada's former ambassador to China. It stemmed really from my reporting on an earlier NSICOP report, one of the first reports on foreign interference, which in a redacted form disclosed that Canada appeared to be a permissive target for China's interference. I later got an unredacted version of that 2019 NSICOP report that revealed a lot more. But again, in a nutshell, if you're permissive of foreign interference from another hostile state, that's indicating that there's either willful blindness, complicity, or capture. And so the concept of elite capture is that states like China, Russia just make it so profitable, so easy to accept their influence, either through what look like good trade benefits or diplomatic benefits that really come with hidden strings that the rest of the population doesn't understand. Your leaders can be captured by hostile states that are really deeply interfering, in a very subtle but effective way. And so the concept of elite capture simply being that if you have enough of your elite captured, that is senior industrialists, senior lawyers, senior lawmakers, senior political aides, and on the political side, as it turns out, you're receiving much of your election fundraising from China's United Front Work Department, it simply becomes the case that you don't have to capture every MP. If your party is captured and really is in hoc to a foreign agency that in a very subtle way is manipulating your contest through donations and diaspora support, which comes, by the way, starting with diaspora threats, that leads to the threat of state capture. And that is, it's very hard to detect, but it's a real concept. It's when you may have a government in Belize but under the surface, it's owned by Chinese triads, which is something I've read in an intelligence document. And so most Canadians wouldn't believe that it could, happen anywhere. But if it can happen in a Latin American country, then you can bet that China is trying to make it happen here. And in my view and research, they're getting pretty close towards their goal.
So that was the next question. Where are we now on the arc between elite capture and state capture?
On the arc between elite capture and state capture, this is one of these times and concepts where when I first heard about state capture, my first reaction was that's impossible in Canada. So the sources that are raising it to me, again, I have to take that with a grain of salt and, as my father said, be from Missouri on that one. You gotta show me, don't just tell me. And so I have to apply that to myself. I have to show myself, and that was the reporting journey. People were telling me that Canada's not really in the Five Eyes anymore. Again, shocking. No one else in the world, would on the surface believe that. But if, very expert Canadian governmental authorities are saying that, if American authorities are saying Canada is not trusted on that level anymore, then, it starts to suggest to you that Canada is moving on that arc further. It's moving out on a dangerous limb from elite capture and approaching that threat of state capture. So where we are, it's sad to say it. If you do believe that Canada is a lower member of the Five Eyes, I think you have to accept that someone's being successful in moving towards a pretty, a dangerous control of our state levers.
In your latest chapter for your book, in the third edition, you mentioned that U.S. sources are alarmed by what is going on in Canada. Presumably you've got very good U.S. sources now coming to you. Maybe you can explain what that means.
My knowledge of how U.S. sources felt about Canada started with the Canadian governmental sources that would express that they were, talking to the American counterparts and starting to explicitly hear that phrases like Canada's not in the Five Eyes anymore. That, credible people are telling, me as a reporter that they've heard that directly. It may be an offhand comment at a Five Eyes meeting on the sidelines, but, when credible and smart people hear things like that and they relay it back to a reporter, it starts to suggest that there's something to dig into there. And so when I was hearing this from Canadian sources that said that American intelligence was pretty instrumental in establishing some very key intelligence in the Chinese election threat network story. So in my belief, that would relate to financing. It would relate to senior politically connected Canadians that apparently the Trudeau government, wasn't taking very seriously warnings from Canadian intelligence. And it might have taken, more persuasion or more information from American intelligence to add to that, what's being termed a mosaic of intelligence sources. And so I believed and assessed that it was plausible that America is looking at the situation in cities like Toronto and Vancouver. There's concern. Remember, in Willful Blindness, before even reporting on the election interference story, I recounted how a U.S. official reached out to myself as a reporter in Vancouver. I sat down for coffee and was told the U.S. government has a growing concern of China's economic and political footprint in Vancouver. So these are, the reporting episodes over the years that pile up, where you're starting to hear from Canadians and Americans that, Ottawa, we've got a problem and it's not being dealt with.
So what will the U.S. do if this keeps up?
The U.S., I read a very interesting historical account. I think it was in relation to William Lyon Mackenzie King being stunned by an American president out of the blue at a joint speech saying the United States will not allow the sovereignty of our northern friend and neighbor to be encroached upon, with the hidden meaning there that it was it was not just a promise to protect a friend, it was a message to Canadian leaders that should they not protect themselves, the United States will take its own military, political, diplomatic actions. Therefore, again, as I suggested in Willful Blindness, one of the early versions, the first version, I was getting the sense that we're in danger of losing our sovereignty in Vancouver, in Canada, because we're giving it away to China. The Americans, rightly, will start to put more liaisons, more intelligence sources, more operators into Canada, because they can't put up with China, Russia, and Iran running roughshod over our institutions in Canada, which is what's happening. So ultimately, if America has to assert its authority in Canada, I believe it will. That's just logical. And I think in a subtle way, we start to see that happen a little bit.
I'm going to turn in a second to a bit more of a personal journey, but I want to have a very clear and simple definition of what the United Front is and what it does, because I know that you've been writing how they're interfering in every aspect of Canadian life. So again, what is the United Front, and what do they do, and how do they interfere?
The United Front, or the United Front Work Department, in essence, it's the way that the Chinese Communist Party, which is a very fractional elite of almost 1.5 billion people, the United Front is how the Chinese Communist Party asserts control over all elements. Every person in mainland China is the subject of United Front activity, and that is to bring those masses, which as a CIA report memorably describes it, could rise up if they wanted to. The United Front is seeking to control and co-opt all elements of Chinese society to the ends of essentially serving and protecting the Chinese Communist Party regime elite. And so the just stunning and alarming findings that I had in Willful Blindness, and which were buttressed by new intelligence sources on the election interference story, was that China's United Front, or its magic weapon as it's called in Chinese documents, has been scaled up massively since Xi Jinping became General Secretary in 2012. There were, we can read in Canadian court documents now, something like 40,000 new cadres added to the United Front Work Department. It's funded, we can now read in Canadian documents, at $2.6 billion per year, with about $600 million of those annual funds flowing into foreign countries to populate, fund, and activate these United Front influence networks, which, to put it very simply, are flooding the zone in Canada to surround our politicians, our influencers, in every way possible, but very physically. As I wrote in Willful Blindness, the photos tell the stories. These United Front Work Department meetings in Vancouver, in Toronto, and Montreal, I could never get over the shock that people that standing beside our Prime Minister, glad-handing, raising a red glass of wine as it may be, in those crowds were known money launderers, known suspected high-level gangsters, known senior suspected Chinese intelligence officials, documented money launderers that were in my casino money laundering intelligence reports, that were, fingered or pointed out in New Zealand money laundering activities. These are the same individuals that are key in the Chinese election interference story. That's the United Front.
Interference. I mean, how bad could it really be?
I often hear people talk about, even up to our former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, saying a few ridings, what's the real damage? And I would tell those people that more informed, more modern, more in tune with the real dangers to Canada sources would put the number of people allegedly colluding with China in senior levels in Canadian government, elected or appointed to Senate, potentially over 50. And so if you take that number and you add all the staff surrounding them, you add all the bureaucrats, multiple levels of government, it can't be less than thousands of people in Canada that are implicated by colluding with foreign states. And so that in itself is unacceptable, but I would further tell people that the most advanced edge of US government reporting, which is now public in congressional hearings, is that intelligence and law enforcement believes in the United States that the Chinese Communist Party is willfully and intentionally incentivizing fentanyl trafficking and the related money laundering around the world. So this is how they are trying to attack and undermine the United States. If the lawmakers in the United States are recognizing that and starting to take action, if anyone in Canada in turn thinks that it's not happening in here, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and become a better reader. And you need to understand that Canada is being attacked in a worse way. And you see the deaths in Vancouver, you see the increasing, you see the scourge of fentanyl, opioids rolling across the country now. Every city, you can now see what I was seeing as a young reporter in Vancouver. It's starting to spread. If the US government says the Chinese Communist Party, in conjunction with Mexican cartels and others, are behind that, everyone should care that the Chinese Communist Party is behind that, and it has to be counteracted. There's no way to safe supply or kind of skirt your way around that.
So I will give Sam immense props for staying in his lane and speaking to that which he knows to be accurate, true, and reflective without getting into the weeds on stuff. You're right, Steve. 68 likes. Come on, guys, smash that thumbs up button to help us get this out past the gatekeepers. There's a bunch of really great comments. I'm going to pull up some of them. Don't know if I'm going to be able to get through all of them because you guys are firing them in faster than I will be able to get through them and be here all night. But Charlie says, I wanted to show this one because I'm sure hoping this man is right, because I've been waiting rather impatiently for Trump to do something about the Chinese control of Canada. Well, here's my response to that is my only hope out of the Trump election was that if he were to clean up America's swamp, genuinely clean up America's swamp, most of our swamp here would die too if we were fighting and combating the swamp from inside as well, right? So that's kind of my hope to see what comes out of that yet, because as somebody else, as Andre said, keep your friends close, your enemy closer. The U.S. considers Canada as one of their I wouldn't say as enemies, but as an uncooperative national threat at this point. Absolutely, they do consider Canada in a very different light than what we, the people, John Q. Public, would think to that regard. And Liza Pine says, and to repeatedly protest is to demonstrate that you continue to believe they have the power over you, and they'll set their rules even if you say no, right? That's exactly the truth. We're going to have to take care of that on our own. I agree, and that's where I come back to saying we have to be fighting this beast from the inside of the swamp as well, right? And there's I think it's Ireland that is on the 11th, Remembrance Day. Got my poppy on. I think that they're calling for a national coast-to-coast strike, and I know that's way more realistic there in a smaller contained space, but wouldn't that be something if we went on a national strike on November 11th for 11 days, demanding accountability to the rule of law in Canada? Wouldn't that be cool, right? Right. Vanessa, I'm still waiting for everyone to wake up and realize this is all a show. It's production and its purpose to keep us thinking it's real while subverting our true power to be self-autonomous. And holy mackerel, just in the time of reading those, 30 more comments. Sorry, guys, I'm not going to get through all of them, but absolutely love to see all the comments. Thumbs up, the shares. And yeah, we could shut our country down. That's when I say Iceland, again, another small, very contained nation. When they dumped their corrupt bankers and system, that's what they did. They shut the country down there for, I think, 7 or 8 days. That was the infamous pots and pans rally in Iceland. and they moved towards constitutional conventions to seat a new form of government. They're still not through the process, but that is ultimately what first broke the corruption, the syndicates in Iceland. And Canada's problem is that we are so huge, so disconnected, cannot seem to find a single baseline to agree on and put a final line in the sand. We will go no further, and it's time to shut those things down. Thanks, Michelle, for all of the thumbs up over on FedBook. Believe it or not, it matters there too. I hate to see anybody left behind, but they are getting antsy, and they're picking up pace on things. And it's right. This is all about control. This next manipulation and act in the story, the theater that's on deck, is more fear, another election. We've covered that. I can only do so much educating. And at some point, if we don't put action to the education, we'll end up being the most educated. We'll end up having the most educated graveyards on the planet. Right? And how desperate is this current regime, this current crime syndicate, with the economic assassin of the world, Mark Carney? Point was brought up here by these
guys. The Liberals so far have tabled 12 new bills, and not a single one of them is about making life more affordable for Canadians. They're all, and I mean every single one of them, about more government control. C5, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act. C6, National Security Amendments Act. C7, Modernization of Investigative Powers Act. C8, Cybersecurity and Telecommunications Amendment Act. C9, Combating Hate Crime. C10, Commissioner for Modern Treaty Implementation Act. C11, Military Justice System Modernization Act. C12, Strengthening Canada's, that's the online platform shit now that it's called. 12 bills, not a single one of them about the economy, not a single one of them about, you know what, let's fix our issues. No, they're all about how can we get more power over the citizens. It is insidious. It's scary even. We clearly see the true agenda of the liberal power, liberal government right now. It's to exert power and control and obedience over the citizenry.
Relentless evil. That's what I describe communism as, is evil. And these guys are desperate and relentless. And I'm, kind of disturbed that there are a great number of people around the world that are more informed about the insidious actions going on within our own country. And do you think, isn't it interesting? We got a list of 12 absolutely tyrannical bills coming forth in various stages, including UBI, which is a second reading in the Senate. So all of these things are absolutely required for the globalist agenda. All of those quote unquote conspiracy theories that are now conspiracy facts, and we're teetering on the edge of all of those things. And today, Toronto Star runs a piece on how Carney is starting to take the lead in confidence in how to handle Canada's path forward. And the other mercenaries were running lines of people would rather get the same budget. If it was the same budget, it wouldn't matter. They would be in favor of it, hearing it from Carney rather than Pierre Poilievre. So the setup, the manufactured plausibility by the mercenary medias to make it a foregone conclusion, it's useless to fight back against Carney's next reelection because he's going to get a majority, and that's what Canadians want. That's what they said. So we have free, fair, and uncorrupted elections in Canada. So if you don't believe it, you are a dangerous conspiracy theorist. You are a threat to democracy and to unity. And the at that point, I'm going to jail for all of the work that I've done, because I would be 10,000 times percent guilty of what they would declare as Islamophobia. I would be 10,000 times guilty of the charges that they would call residential school denialism. I would be guilty of all kinds of misleading and dangerous information about the government, the health system, the enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, Antifa, foreign interference from all different directions. That's why I'm giving myself 90 days of potential safety based on what they are manufacturing for the narrative for this upcoming quote unquote national crisis, because Pierre's going to say no to the budget and there will be a non-confidence vote, and it's absurdity. It's completely 100 manufactured, concocted theater. It's a giant video game in the Avatar universe that has no footing in reality, and we are paying the consequences in the reality of their fucking Avatar agenda, and it's getting incredibly deadly. And we're going to get into some real dark shit here now that is questioning. First, I'm going to set it up with a clip from Dollar Vigilante, who pretty much lays it out straight. And then we're going to get into, I've got a little clip from everybody's favorite shit disturber. How do I say it? And two of your favorite shit disturbers. One of them I'm using that is in absolute utter sarcasm in describing BB, and then our actual real favorite shit disturber, Tayana Truth Seeker. I've got clips from them coming up after Dollar Vigilante, and then we're going to get into the most evil thing beyond comprehension. As good people, we are not even wired to be able to process how evil can be. And under that, guys, our government is leaving a legacy of death and horror that make Pol Pot, Mao, Marx, and even the mustache dude look like choir children. That's what our government has an agenda of. And I cannot fight to save a country that would tolerate and accept what they are normalizing in our country and what our country is now representing to the world. And that needs to be absolutely unacceptable. There is no riding the fence on this one, guys. And if this is not getting to one of the most unifying points of baseline interest in our entire country, if we can't come together on that one single understanding, then maybe we don't deserve to exist as a nation in the capacity that we think that it is. All right, Dollar Vigilante, and then we're going to get into this serious, deep shit.
Libertarian or anarcho-capitalist philosophy have said that socialized medical care, at the end of it, ends up with death panels, which actually Bill Gates has already brought up.
Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel. And you're not supposed to have that discussion.
Yeah, you're not supposed to talk about it, but They're actually doing that in Canada now. They have a thing called MAID, the Medically Assisted Dying Program or something from the government, which even my own father, who's been wrecked by the lethal injections and mind controlled by the television programming, has brought up to me a few times how he might just have the government put him to sleep at some point. Like, that's how under mind control most people there are. And we've talked about how socialized medical care ends up with death panels. And the reason is that when you socialize something, all of a sudden everyone's got a great interest in you. So if you're kind of like fat, overweight, and sick, if you live in a society with a socialized medical system, people start looking at you like you're stealing money from them. You're taking their money. And it eventually reaches a point where they begin to talk about, well, if you're kind of like sick, maybe they should kill you. And they're actually talking about that now in Canada.
So the Journal of Death and Dying recently this year of 2025 came out and expressed what Health Canada's plans look like to do to save money. They are on track starting 2027 to 2047 to save $1.273 trillion by providing 14.7 million Canadians with MAID rather than palliative care.
What was that number? Say that.
14.7 million Canadians. Over 9 million of those are projected to be elderly. Over 4 million of those are projected to be the mentally ill and suicidal. Over 300,000 of those are projected to be the Indigenous population, and then everyone else, addicts, homeless, and otherwise. So Canada's running a eugenics program, and they're planning to expand that with the start of mentally ill only qualification in 2027.
Anybody think I'm kidding or that she's exaggerating? That's the report. I'm going to read just the abstract for you guys, just the first paragraph. I'm going to provide a link to this and a copy in case they remove it, because I think they're messing with it already, but I've got a PDF copy. This study explores a potential economic savings from expanding medical assistance in dying in Canada, where it is currently a leading cause of death to include vulnerable groups that cost the government more than they contribute in taxes. So if you don't make the balance the books, you're now a target to be terminated by the government. These groups include individuals with severe mental health issues, the homeless, drug users, retired elderly, and Indigenous communities. Both voluntary and non-voluntary scenarios were analyzed. Do you think I would be voluntary? But they've got their bases covered. They got the non-voluntary scenarios worked out as well. Projecting total savings of up to Canadian dollars of 1.273 trillion by 2047, with an estimated 2.6 million deaths in the voluntary scenario, mostly among mentally ill and elderly populations. Those are the ones they're selling the death parties to in the respite and senior centers right now, right? And so, yeah, this cost saving measure raises significant ethical concerns. Financially incentivizing MAID could shift healthcare priorities away from providing necessary support, potentially devaluing vulnerable lives and fostering a troubling reliance on assisted death as an economic solution. Ring a bell, folks? You know that mustache guy's final solution? We are now a fucking economic solution. And by 2047, that's people my age and everybody in between that might be a few years older than some of us watching right now. We are now an economic solution to be solved by them terminating us. The findings highlight a need for ethical scrutiny of MAID expansion policy. So no, none of this is a joke anymore. And if accepting this is a part of the social contract of Canada, get fucking bent. This must be unacceptable. And yes, I'm using this language for a reason, because this is where that if we are not actively combating it, we are condoning it. And with 12 bills on the table, like we just heard of, in a government that has the lowest morality and ethical scale on the freaking planet, and the longest history of being captured by hostile evil entities, this is what Canada is now representing. And now this is the meat and the potatoes of why I'm sorry. Because I cannot fight to save a country if it is that evil. That's what the Nazis did. I can't do that. This is premeditated slaughter and selling off the parts like butcher shops. I wasn't going to let that rant loose till a little later on in the show. I love the people with all of my heart, and I love the promise of life this country represents. Not the promise of the quality of life, but the promise of life itself. That is what this country is supposed to believe in. That's what generations sacrificed themselves for. That is our core Canadian identity right there, that they have tried to demolish and destroy through white coats psychosis and actual psychological abuse, programming, and terrorism of our own innocent and unsuspecting population. We don't just need an 11-day shutdown in this country. We need an 11-day shutdown and a freaking exorcism. Still got a lot to cover. I better not blow the top of my head right off completely. Metaphorically speaking, of course, I have no desire to leave this fight prematurely in any way, shape, or form. I'm sure I'll have more to add to that a little later on.
And for those that are find those stats as disgusting as I do, you can go check out the SAGE Journal or the Journal of Death and Dying. They break it all down for you. They go through the numbers. We've also done it on the series as well.
Yes, the Canadian government is talking about killing 15 million Canadians over the next 20 years, which I think it might be over the next couple of years, actually. But still, 15 million. Do you know how many people live in Canada? It's about 40 million. So almost half of the people in Canada right now will be killed by the government in the coming years. And how many Canadians are even talking about this? Hardly none. Zero! Because they're all under mind control. I even wonder if they're allowing the Blue Jays to win the World Series so far just to take Canadians' mind off of it. Because most Canadians are like, yeah, we're going to win the World Series. You're not. They are. They're all American, except for one player. But, they're under the mind control. But, the government has basically come out and said they're going to kill half the people in Canada in the coming years. And they're increasing the amount of foreigners. There's only about 25 million white people in Canada. They say they're going to kill 15 million. It'll probably be all white people. And if you actually think about it, the numbers that they're saying is pretty darn close to the Deagle forecast. That's almost exactly what Deagle said the population numbers are going to be. This is getting so bizarre to watch. And so I'm glad I'm watching it from afar. You might be thinking, well, there's got to be some Canadians who are going to fight back against this basically genocide of most of them, right? Well, yeah, there's definitely some. Not many, but there's some. And most of them don't have any guns because for the most part, guns are illegal in Canada. You're allowed to have like a rifle for hunting. And even a couple guns are allowed if you keep them in a vault, which is like pointless when you have a gun. Usually if you have a gun, you need it like kind of quick, right? You don't want to be like spinning the dial. Someone's coming up behind you with a knife. But it's Canada. And then if you kill the guy with the gun who broke into your house, you'll go to jail for the rest of your life in Canada. That's just how it is. But some people still have a couple guns. And they've been basically saying now that in about a year, anyone who has any guns, and there isn't that many, but those that do, will be ended up in jail for like 10 years.
Canadians starting in Cape Breton today will be able to enroll in the program, be able to get compensated if they were to turn their firearm in, or they will be able to get compensation if they deactivate and confirm that it's deactivated with a certificate. So it is strictly voluntary. Nobody is being forced to undertake the buyback program. Well, the expectation is that they will comply, and the order in council, as you know, is being extended from this October to October of 2026. So there is a one-year window. Our expectations is that law-abiding citizens will abide by the law, and beyond that, the police of jurisdiction is tasked to, as you know, implement the criminal code.
It is so wild to watch all this stuff in real time, and stuff that I basically said was going to happen. When, even like 10 years ago, I was saying things like, the socialized medical system is going to end up with death panels and death camps and stuff. And almost everybody thought I was insane. And now they're actually doing it, and no one seems to notice because they're all fluoridated. They got aluminum. They're spraying them with the aluminum. It's incredible. But some people are starting to notice, and a bunch of people are trying to escape or defect from Canada now. Canada's great escape. The cost of living crisis drives record exodus in 2025. But here's the funny part. So a bunch of the smarter Canadians are trying to get out. I don't know what took them so long. I saw this coming 20 years ago. But here's the funny thing. They're trying to bring in all these immigrants from like India and Pakistan and all these like third world countries. And like half of them, when they get to Canada, they're like, I don't want to live here. This is horrible. A recent poll has found that 42%, almost half of recent immigrants to Canada, are considering leaving the country due to dissatisfaction with the quality of life. Yeah, they can barely survive. It's so wild. And of course, you got Mark Carney of the Elbows Up. Who's in the same political party as Justin Castro, and somehow they got back in. And you see a lot of people like, oh, if only Peter Poilievre got in. Peter Poilievre is a World Economic Forum young global leader. He's best friends with Justin Castro. It's all a big show, just like all of it. But people can never figure it out. I even saw a video just today. I don't know why it came up on my screen, but it was a Canadian guy who had moved to Paraguay, which I have to say, if you had to live in Canada or Paraguay, it's a very easy choice. Incredibly easy. Paraguay is actually awesome. And he was talking about all the things, all the reasons he left Canada and how much better it is in Paraguay.
But the point I really wanted to make was the cost of living here is like half or less than Canada. And there's no taxes on my income, and there's no taxes on my purchases. So when you add that up, I can almost buy 3 times as much as I can buy in Canada. Like in Canada, me and my wife were saying, well, how often can we afford to buy beef? How often can we afford to go out to eat? What can we do? We're paying $3,000 for our home. We're paying $150 at the grocery store. We're barely getting anything. How can we even afford good vegetables? Here, I just bought 4 steaks for like $7, and they were good. They were better than Canadian steaks. You go to restaurants with your family, you're maybe spending $20, $30. The best restaurants in town, you're spending like $75 for like a premium premium steak, premium restaurant, a buffet, the best buffet in the town, like $25 a person. So the cost of living is way less. I'm renting a brand new townhouse, spacious, 2-bedroom garage, nice deck with a built-in grill, brand new granite countertop, nice kitchen. Guess how much it is? Guess, think about how much that would be in Canada. It's 800 Canadian. I paid 6 months up front. What was it, like 3,000 US bucks or something like that? Just gave them the cash, 6 months. That's like almost just a bit more than 1 month in Canada. Now, the one thing that isn't cheaper here is if you try to import American goods or Canadian goods too. Imports have some importation taxes on it. They want you to buy locally, but Paraguay has amazing shopping. The malls are very nice. There is everything you need. They even have like Apple stores, secondary market Apple stores, everything you need if you want. Clothes, a lot of selection, goods, foods, herbs, ingredients, seeds, all of that. They got nice, decent farmers markets. I order kombucha every week, get 4 liters delivered to my house. Oh yeah, the service in Paraguay is amazing. Everything is done on WhatsApp, so you don't have to worry if you don't speak Spanish. You don't have to call people. Everything is done on WhatsApp. So if you have trouble speaking the language, you can just do a translation back and forth, screenshot it or copy paste it to the translator. So here I am, 6 months into my journey. I've already acquired my residency. I'm an official temporary resident. I have a driver's license. No plan to go back to Canada.
Oh, I should mention, if you're on YouTube, you probably can't see any of that stuff. Go to vigilante.tv right now and you can watch the full video with all the clips.
I get it. Is he being a little bit hyperbolic and a little bit sensationalist in his comments? Yes. Is he maybe broad brushing a little bit? Yes. He's not speaking to an individual there. He's, obviously broad brushing it. But this is the view from outside of Canada. He went to Uruguay. Or Uruguay or Paraguay. Either way. There would have been a time I would have called him a coward too, but now I'm sitting here looking at this situation and going, if I can't predict my safety for more than 90 days in Canada, what the hell do I do? I'm no good to anybody in a gulag or life imprisonment under house arrest. what use am I then? Paraguay, yeah. Interesting thing about Paraguay is there's a lot of Mennonites there, which is my first language. I would get along really fine down there. Both of those guys were Canadian in that video. Dollar Vigilante left more than a decade ago, I think. The other fella just left 6 months ago. Are you guys going to call me a coward if I leave? Here's the thing. I wouldn't even have to let you know. As long as I got a camera, the internet, and a background screen, I can keep fighting, right? There's no guarantee of that for me here in Canada in as little as 90 days, potentially. So this is what runs through my head. I got a government that wants to kill me. It already hates me, thinks that I'm mentally ill, and committing a habitual criminal against their ideology. We're up against complete and utter total mind control. Now I've got which do you want first? No, I'm not going to give you that choice. We're got a little clip here from Tiana Truth Seeker, who I know you guys all love, where she does a little bit of a dip into mind control. And this is from a friendly face. And then we'll look at when the quiet part is said out loud from BB.
Have you asked yourself, why is the world an absolute dumpster fire right now? Like, is it social media? Is it, TV? Why are we in such a mess today? And why are there so many stupid people, considering there's so much information out there that people can read, that they can gather, and that they can gather their thoughts with? Well, I went down that rabbit hole and I found mind control and when it started, how it started, and how we've been developing mind control to be specific to 3 categories that the entire world, governments, and 3-letter agencies have pretty much placed us in. If you're wondering where I got this from, there's a report called the Henry Kissinger Report. Let me show you. It was basically written in 1974, and it is called the National Security Study Memorandum, or the NSSM 200. It started because the government was scared that we would have a population, overflow, and that we would not have enough resources to keep the population asleep, and that they would turn on the government. So literally, population growth became a national security for the government. And so they deployed a bunch, and I mean a bunch of propaganda, whether it was MK Ultra, whether it was media, MSM, propaganda, indoctrination in schools, universities, high schools, you name it. Every single aspect of our life started to change so that we would fit into one of the 3 categories that they have us categorized now. And I wanted to show you guys a bell curve that I made, that I got from the sources and pulled the information from, but I couldn't really find a bell curve of it. So I drew one for you, and I'll kind of explain what I've read in certain CIA papers. Let me show you. So out of a population in every country, so this is like an entire world population, you have truly asleep, truly awake, and then people in the middle. But let me tell you what they categorize us as. So you've got this group, which are the NPCs, and these 10% on each side are people who kind of take characteristics of both the sheeple and the awake, or the NPC and the sheeple. So you've got the NPCs, which the government calls useful idiots. Then you've got the middle group, the largest population, which is called the sheep or the sheeple. Then you have 20% goats. Now, if you've ever raised goats, you know why the CIA calls the awakened goats. And those of you who think that there is truly an awakening happening, it's not. It's just that this 10% is getting louder. The sheep will always be sheep. And what's interesting about each group is it has nothing to do with your social status, religion, political status, or how much money you make, what your education level is. It has to do with IQ and how emotionally awake you are. And it's super interesting. And I'm thinking of doing an entire series of basically explaining to people how they're being targeted by the government for propaganda.
I think that'll be interesting. We've done some of that with Michelle Smith, if you recall. We did a couple of marathons on that, actually. All right. No, this is... You guys are the most intellectually and emotionally accurate community with the most clarity that I know of in Canada. There's a lot of good stuff going on out there. Not saying there isn't. I'm not trying to knock any other group or thing. I have to speak in generalities. I'm not speaking to an individual. A lot of people have merit and good points and good fights. But for the overall picture, overall level of information, there's a lot of specifics out there, but you guys are the most balanced community that there is. And we're going to look at more here on how we can become better leaders within our community. The more we understand, the less we fall prey to. Now, we just heard from a friendly face on some of the mind control and how she's explaining it in order for us to protect ourselves from it. But there's a dark side of that as well, right? I'm just going to play one little clip. You may have caught this from the documentary we watched last week from, was it James Cameron, I think, on the backstory of Palestine and Israel. So this is a kind of a clip from that. It's only 20 seconds that I'm going to play for you guys before we get into what that mind control can achieve.
To blow up a bus full of children or a building full of innocent civilians, you have to grind it into their minds. You have to wash their brains and tell them there's a higher cause out there. It's religious, ethnic, racial, whatever. And for that higher cause, you can disregard all the normal rules of morality.
For that higher cause, you can disregard all the rules of morality, the foundation of the social contract that our societies function upon. Right? That's what can be achieved with that level of programming. It's no different. It's no different than the suicide bombers. Just a different mission set. Now, just to circle back to Kelsey Sheeran for just a minute, then I'm going to make a couple of other points on the subject matter that is absolutely enraging me and I'm becoming obsessed with. We seriously needs to organize. I don't have the answers yet, but I'm absolutely committed to finding some. We have been morally violated. Absolutely. Right? So a little refresher from Kelsey.
Because what happens when you open the door to killing, you don't get to close or decide what walks through.
But Kelsey, what would be the incentive? What is the motive?
Ready? I got one for you.
Because you got to have a motive.
Money.
Let me show you how. Someone dies, it's over. Chronicity is big business.
No. This is where you're wrong here, darling. End of life is money time. Okay? So, Canada, a new journal on the Sage Journal on the Omega website. You can go find it on Sage. The medical journals that are peer-reviewed papers from universities, which I can show it to you. It's called the Journal of Death and Dying. It came out this year. And they did an estimate of what Canada looks to save once they turn the mental illness into the MAID protocol. So from 2027 to 2047, which is a 20-year period, that is when mental illness, meaning anybody can qualify. You don't have to be dying anymore, sweetheart. You can just have a hard time. And once you're in the system, you're in it.
So it doesn't cost them money to treat you through the government, so they save money.
You ready to find out how much? 2027 to 2047, they're expected to use MAID on roughly, this is the journal's, they've done the math, this is the journal's estimate, 14.7 million Canadians. Okay? They're going to save to a tune of $1.273 trillion instead of providing palliative care.
Now, this is the Journal of Death and Dying, to which he references specifically there. Right? Did I lose one? But yeah. So let's put that into a little bit of perspective, shall we? Canada's total military casualties across all wars and conflicts is estimated at 130,000 people, 67,000 basically in World War I. World War II, 45,000, Korean War, 516, Afghanistan, 159, Russian Civil War, 14, Bosnia, 23. All combined, that is still 14.57 million people less than the government of Canada is strategized the lawful killing of under MAID by 2047. Fresh set. Hopefully there's more than 1,900 views on that so far. Oh, 2,800. 2,800. Do you think that's what should be of top priority? 68 shares. Posted that this morning. All this assisted suicide has been a boon to organ donation. A Dutch study found that Canada is now the global epicenter for organs harvested from people who have died by assisted suicide. As of January 2023, already, Canada led the world in organ donations from euthanasia. That's the bragging rights Canada has right now. I can't defend a government, a nation, a people that normalizes that. I can't. So we have to find those that do not and will not accept that. And we have to organize those. And I will have very little time for anybody that does not stand against that. It's time to combat that, or we are condoning it. I was asked today, well, why don't you go after the drug companies that supply them the drugs they need to kill the people? My answer to that is I tried that for 15 years. I fought the cancer industry and lost. So just taking out the drug company through public outcry won't solve the problem. It has to be us. And it has to become, and this is important for Americans. Who's buying these organs? Who is buying these people's organs? Who are these people being murdered and slaughtered and carved up to support? We cannot trust our government to give us answers on that. Who has most of the money on the planet? Who are we selling this shit to that we're accepting? Is anybody asking that question out there? I think the answer is to find out who's doing the actual transplants, not the carving, but the transplants. China has their own meat market going on. They've been selling parts and we beat them. You know, that's one of the things that pisses me off. I read an American paper yesterday, as a matter of fact, where they're saying we can no longer ethically stand China's transplant syndicate. So my question to them was, and replace them with who? Canada? You cannot claim the moral high ground, America, if you're switching one for another evil and claim to be a friend of Canada. Sorry. This needs to be called out from both sides of the fence. Evil is evil, and I don't care which border it lives within. And this is the part that frustrates me. When it comes to asking that question and demanding those answers and that kind of accountability, I don't think even Kelsey's got to that question yet. Who's buying our parts? Who are we being harvested for? That's how evil Canada is. They didn't even do, Pol Pot and Hitler didn't even do this shit. hidden. Isn't it, Denny? It's hidden. It's a medical industrial complex, Wayne. Unless it's asked and the donor wants to be known, it's not disclosed. And here's why we need to work with America, because I cannot force pressure on the American medical industrial complex that is buying this shit. But Americans can. Americans have to. If not, they're condoning it. And I'm not saying anyone specifically, but I'll tell you what, I thought I had served my American allies really, really well over the last several years. But when I put this to them over the last couple of days, do you know how much response I got? I didn't even get an acknowledgement, not even a reply. And I got to tell you, that kind of hurts. And I don't know what to do about it. It's being protected. I don't know why. Or there's just no interest. There's no appetite for answers, in which case I can no longer predict my safety in less than 90 days. I'm still healthy enough. I might be more valuable to my government as a corpse than I am as a free-speaking individual. That keeps me up at nights, right? And it's only a small group of you guys that are going to come looking for me. Okay. I'm still not going to sleep any better tonight after having got all of that off my chest tonight. I will go when God decides to go. That is my belief. I know that he wins at the end of the day, but there is no guarantee that I get to see it. But when I have to think about the choices that I have in front of me right now, they're significantly different than what I thought they might be a year ago or 2 years ago or 6 years ago, 7 years ago when I had started this. No, this is not new. It's just new to us, new to our country. Joseph Mengele would be proud of Canada, wouldn't he? All of those transplanted scientists we borrowed post-World War II. The Fourth Reich. Experimentation. Yeah. This is why, like I said earlier in advance, I'm sorry, I can't fight for this country if this is what it is and what its legacy is gonna be. I'm not going down with the Fourth Reich. I'm not going to be a party to the evil that they have planned. Well, this next clip, this has been a dark one tonight, right? And then now tonight is a this isn't the last clip. The last one I've got is one of inspiration. But this one, and this is not directed at anybody, but I listened to this one 3 different times. And it's a gut punch. It's a reality check. It's from Chase Hughes. But it's also liberating. And he's not pointing at any fingers at any individuals. But he's just sharing some of his human behavior wisdom. Right? So don't take it personal. Don't be offended. He's going to say some things that If they're not meant for you, they're not meant for you, but they will be meant for somebody. And it might just be the message that somebody needs. And it might be the weapon that you can, not a weapon, but a tool that you can add to your toolbox from having this level of understanding from a place where it is very, very lonely to be an intellectual.
What I want to try to do tonight is give you something that I pray and I hope will stick inside of your brain for the rest of your life. And I'm going to give you something that is going to flare up your ego's defense mechanisms a little bit, but I want you to promise me, are you willing to suspend any of the ego stuff that comes up, of any of the that's not me, any of the I would never do that, any of the I'm way more perfect than what he's describing? So as we kick this off, I want you just to think about the one thing that you are ashamed of, the one thing maybe you hate yourself for it the most. You don't need to say it, you don't need to type it in. And what if I told you that carrying the shame or guilt about that makes you a bad person? And that shame is not morality. It's cowardice. It's absolute cowardice. And if you keep clutching onto it, people are not going to get a gut feeling to trust you. You're not going to be followed easily unless you fake it for the rest of your life. And you're never going to be free. This might sting a little bit, but if you don't walk away changed tonight, I have failed. So let me first tell you a trick that your brain is playing on you probably right now, if you're willing to admit it. And some people aren't ready for that, and that's okay. But it convinces you that guilt or shame equal I'm a good person. It equals goodness. So I feel terrible, therefore I must care. I must be a decent person if I feel like shit about this thing that I did. That's a lie. That's absolutely, completely false. Guilt is what I will call masturbation of the ego. It keeps you the center of your own pity party, and you can kind of replay that little loop. You rob everyone around you of a stable leader or a present parent. If you've ever thought like holding on makes me better, then I will issue you a huge congratulations here. That thought is why people don't trust you, and you've just uncovered it. And here's the number one thing I want you to write down right now. If any of this has touched you or like, oh shit, that hurt a little bit, write this down, please. I am using pain as a disguise for virtue. So if you could kind of picture this in your mind, like just form a mental image of this. Your best friend comes to you today. Your best friend shows up and is like, hey, I've got to confess something. They confess the thing that you're holding against yourself. They say the same thing that you're holding back and pretending not to have. Would you forgive your friend? So why don't you forgive you? Drama is easier than discipline. Guilt is super comfortable. It's predictable. Forgiveness demands change. So here's the paradox right here. And this is the true paradox with all of this stuff. You think that holding guilt makes you good, but it just makes you selfish. You get addicted to the feeling of shame because it becomes a little identity. I'm ashamed of that. That makes me a good person because I have good morals and good values. Shame is safer than stepping into authority. The authority triangle, if you've studied that in NCI, says that confidence, composure, and discipline are the big tripwires for power in life and to have power in your life, not over others, power. People respect power, and that's, you get over others because you have power over yourself. But shame is the complete hydrochloric acid that you're dumping on all three of those things. You cannot be in composure. You can't be composed while you're bracing against an old memory. You can't be confident while your inner monologue is saying, I'm not worthy of this, or I don't deserve this stuff. And you can't have discipline in your life when your energy goes into hiding skeletons. I grew up in a life where like our entire existence was about hiding skeletons, make sure nobody sees the skeletons. So every ounce of guilt or shame that you're carrying is a signal that says, do not follow me. Don't follow me, I'm not safe. And people pick it up 100% of the time. If I could ask you to do something, take that thing that you thought of at the very beginning. That one thing that came to mind of like, here's the thing I hate about myself, here's the thing I feel shame or guilt about. And feel it in your chest for a second. Like, let it get a little bit uncomfortable for just a second. And notice the way that automatically, without me even saying that you need to do this, your jaw is tighter. Your breathing is a little more shallow. The way that your body shifts a little bit. Maybe your rib cage kind of comes down to protect your abdomen a little bit. Now hear me. Nothing about what you felt just now made you a good or noble person. It doesn't help anyone on this entire planet. Nothing you did was virtuous. It was selfish to keep it alive inside of you for this long, and it was taking away from how you could have benefited other people. I forgive you. Say it right now. Not the world, not other people, you. Do it out loud, do it in your head. But I want you to actually feel those words, not just like saying it like it's a magical Harry Potter spell. Feel those words really quick and watch what happens in your body. Your shoulders fall, your face relaxes, your jaw loosens up, your breathing gets a little bit deeper. That's what authority feels like when it's not leaking. And the only person who could have given it to you was you. And here's the big secret. You don't need to earn forgiveness. And I'm going to say that twice more. You do not need to earn any forgiveness from anyone. You do not need to earn forgiveness. Your job is to weaponize it. If you get to a point of radical self-forgiveness, that's not like having mercy. That's ammunition. I'm collecting some kind of ammunition to where I can fight what I need to actually fight, the things that make a difference in my life. All of that fuses you back together. It shuts down all these blind spots that blind us from the entire world. It makes you magnetic because people finally see wholeness, a real you, instead of a fractured version of you. The crazy part of this is the moment that you forgive yourself, it needs to be at the point of somebody might think you're crazy. Someone might think that you're a little unstable because you forgive yourself for that thing, that one thing that you probably brought up, and then you changed it because you wanted to think about something else because you were ashamed. That thing. You need to be delusionally self-forgiven because there's no virtue to it. You are not a good person. You are not virtuous for carrying around shame and guilt. It does not make you a good person. And the moment, this is what's the weird part of this life on earth, whatever the hell this planet, this reality is, the moment that you completely forgive yourself, people start forgiving you too. And it's absolutely not because they decided to forgive you. It's just because humans follow wholeness every single time. You might have watched my episode with Joe Rogan a few weeks ago. The reason he's got like 6 times the amount of viewership as like CNN or any of the major news people is because there's wholeness there. It's like he's not narrative based. He's not scripting a response to get to make you see him a certain way. We're thirsting and starving for something that's real. So you can't command other people until you reclaim the parts of you that you abandoned and that you got rid of. So tonight, hopefully you got a claim of one little thing, like some guilt or shame, and hopefully that's burned and gone. It's total bullshit. It's all fake. All the guilt and shame stuff, it's all fake. I'm here to tell you, maybe I'm you in another version, in another reality, in another dimension. You asked me to say this to you. wake up. It's not real. It's fake. All the stuff that you've been programmed with is fake. You're supposed to have fun. It's a simulation. It's a game. You're made to have fun. You're made to enjoy it. And you're made to do good and be good to other people. So if you think you're waiting for permission to let all that shit go, you just got it. I gave it to you. And the second that you just uncontrollably, unbelievably just forgive yourself and be a good person, the world forgives you too automatically. I want you to walk out a little more whole than you came in. More whole. Because if you are a fragmented leader, you don't get followed by people. You want to look, all the people that you look up to, they're radically self-forgiving. They're the people that are truly doing that. And I'm not saying this as a frickin' guru or anybody who's got like life figured out. I have more uncertainty than I have certainty. But I'm definitely certain about this one thing, about human behavior. You do not become a better person by holding on to a bunch of shame and bullshit. That's all. Just forgive yourself. It's supposed to be fun. I am you, and you asked me to tell you this. Wake up. It's not real. You're supposed to have a good time here.
Some Canadians sorely need that message. That shame and guilt programming is what is one of the major factors destroying our country, dividing and conquering us. And we're letting it happen through bullshit like shame and guilt. And we're allowing that. Right? So it might be a bit of a punch in the gut for some, but that's where we're at. And we have to start being frank. Frank isn't the most popular guy, but he is genuine and honest, right? So, yeah, we got to stop carrying, we got to put down a bag of rocks. We're meant to have fun and enjoy and love each other. We shouldn't be debating where the jurisdiction ends on murder in our country. That is an absolute failure of everything our country represents, right? And to me, although I know what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is, but that first line, recognizing the supremacy of God and the rule of law, that is the foundation of our social contract. And we need to stop this shit dead in its tracks. Right? So this is the last and final clip of the night, folks. A little bit of interesting and inspirational stuff to make you smile and have a little bit more faith moving forward. I found this pretty cool for those that wants to, show me the science. Well, here's a little bit of that science.
You can see this is apparently Mount Sinai. There's video footage of all this. The top is still burned. Became a type of a volcanic glass like obsidian or something. It actually burned the rock. There's also apparently the altar that Aaron made with a golden calf. They made the golden calf on the altar, but on the side of the altar, they drew a picture of a calf, a cow. Still there. God told Moses to smite the rock and water would come out. A lot of folks think this is the rock that Moses smote. That rock sticking up on that mountain is 5 stories tall. 50 feet to the top of that rock, as tall as these trees around here. And it's split right down the middle. On both sides, there are erosion marks. Water came pouring out of that rock. We have sulfur balls. I've got some here on the table. These are actual sulfur balls from Sodom and Gomorrah. They're 99.9% sulfur, and they're burned out. These sulfur balls specimens were tested by Michael Bonilla, a friend of mine up in New York. He said they were 97.4% pure sulfur when he had them tested. Millions of these sulfur balls are over there, right in that one area. It literally rained burning sulfur. So hot that it took the bricks of the city and baked it into ash. No place else in the world has these phenomena. We've got hundreds of them in our museum out here. Sulfur balls from Sodom and Gomorrah. You can see.
I love that little clip. Right? For the non-believers, prove that wrong, right? And right now we are watching the Sodom and Gomorrah of our day. And it's time to find our army to not just resist in spirit, but to find a way to shut this shit down. So that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grannies and gators, friends, family, prisoners, patriots, and hostages too, is everything that I have for tonight. That was a swim through the deep end, the dark side of the swamp. And so I guess a bit of a foundation of some of the things that you can expect me to be fighting even harder for and over the next little while, because that is what we walked through today is absolutely unacceptable to me. I cannot recognize, accept, or tolerate or condone it, and our silence is our consent. So we have to find a way to unite on one common thing in this damn country and start there. And if it is not protecting the life, we can squabble about the quality of life, the livelihood, the income, the economics, but we are at a point where basic right to life is absolutely being decimated, and they plan on literally culling half of our population. I'm not sitting around waiting for that to happen. Right? Whew. So yeah, looking for other people, other journalists, influencers that want to work together to do something greater than themselves and find common ground to come together on how we can organize to fight this shit. Support your trusted voices, whoever that might be, the ones that are sticking their necks out and saying the things that aren't being said and fighting for them. They're doing it, the ones that are doing it from love and authenticity, right? If you want to help keep me fighting like this, the information is at the bottom of the screen there. Donate at whatsupcanada.org if you want to buy me a coffee for this. Appreciate all of you guys that keep me in this fight month in, month out for the last almost 7 years. You guys are the best community out there. Community, not audience, your community. Get involved with your dollars against the cabal. Switchwithwayne.com. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to agree on the rights to live. Let's start there. Let's fight that fight. It's absolutely winnable, right? If you need to reach out to me, good, bad, or otherwise, contact at whatsupcanada.org. I will get to them at my availability as possibility. Get plugged in on whatsupcanada.substack.com. Everything I do is always free. If you want to volunteer a subscription there, it'll ask you. You don't have to, but if you do, it's like $8 a month. It's like 50 cents a night. We do this Monday to Friday. Lord willing, I'll be back tomorrow again with another whole new box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. If you're new here, I hope you find enough value to at least hit a subscribe, turn the notifications on. I do this 7 days a week because you're not going to get, or 5 days a week because there's no guarantee you're going to get your notifications. But I love you guys all. Stay mighty, stay blessed, and Lord willing, we'll see you here same time again, same place tomorrow. All right. Peace. Aloha. I love you. I see you.